how would you describe your work and how it helps the environment?
Yeah. Okay, so I do a couple of different things. My main job as a researcher is that I go and collect debris, teach communities how to collect plastic and other debris on riversides or on the coast, on the ocean. And then what I really want them to do is not just like collect the stuff, but to use scientific methods to do it so that researchers can see that and know like what debris is like all over the world. And then also they share the results with policymakers. So I'm hoping that they can use that science to try to change policy. So like at the state level, we had a policy a few years ago with plastic bags where they weren't free at the grocery store anymore. You have to pay for them, and now they're not allowed at the grocery store. It's still going. So that's a really good example of a policy that has already, I think, started reducing the amount of plastic in Connecticut.
Great. What inspired you to work to better the environment?
That's a good question. I love the environment. I used to collect bugs, and so I was really like interested in the environment. And then the more I studied it, the more I learned about all the ways we are damaging the environment. And so that sort of like learning about that from teachers made me want to be the person who's teaching other people about that. And I forgot to say, I don't just do that research, I also make art out of plastic to try to spread information about how it's damaging the environment.
Yeah, and can you talk a little about the current project you're doing with the plastic?
So I started it in February of 2021, and it's called Entangled and Ingested, and it is all about so let me put it this way. So in the mid 90s, there was this researcher, and he was the first person to gather all the data about animals that are harmed by plastic pollution. So he wrote this scientific research article where he named all the different species that were affected. And it was actually over 250 different species. Some of them suffer from entanglement, being wrapped up in debris. Some from, Hazel, sit. Some from ingestion, which means they were eating the debris. But I'm working on this group of 46 animals where we had records, even in 1996, of them being exposed to both entanglement and ingestion. So it's a group of 46 animals, and I'm making life-size portraits of each of them by sewing film plastic onto canvas. And for the larger ones, the public helps. And actually, you've been one of the people who've helped me more than most on one of them, a big 60-foot whale.
Yeah. So what do you think is the most important thing that you learned about like plastics in oceans and rivers?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of like data and statistics about the problem, but I think what's important to understand is that it's something that we can make better. You know, like there's a lot of problems it feels like really hard to solve, but one of the things we can do is just try to use less plastic, especially single-use plastics. So like every time you tell someone at a restaurant that you don't want a plastic straw and you don't use it, or every time you use a refillable water bottle, then you can really do a lot to make that better.
Yeah, so you kind of answered my next question was, what can people do to help out?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
definitely. So I always tell people like use less plastic, especially less single-use plastic. But I also think like it's important to tell companies that use plastic that you don't want to use it. You know, that it makes you think differently about their products. So, for example, I have contacted Amazon a couple of times to tell them that I would rather they didn't have those plastic mailing things. And a lot of our food is wrapped in plastic. And I think it would be really helpful to contact those companies and say, why don't you wrap your food in something else?
Yeah, okay. Anything else that you want to share?
Oh, no, I think that pretty much covers it. It's just one environmental problem, and there are a lot of different environmental problems out there. But I hope it's one that people know a bunch about now and are trying to make better.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.